deep in the heart of Central Texas, it's the Best of the Outdoors podcast. Brought to you by Texas Fish and Game Magazine, the voice of the Texas outdoor nation. I'm your host, Dustin Von Warnke, author, outdoor writer, videographer, blogger, speaker, and podcaster. And I'm so excited that you took the opportunity to join us today. Thank you so much for listening and tuning in to our shows. Today, we are going to talk a little bit about kind of a recap of ICAST, and that is the big fishing show that happens every year in, well, it depends on what state it's in, but this year it was in Orlando, Florida. And we had a lot of fun. A whole team of our editorial crew went, as well as us folks that live in the advertising realm went, and we had a lot of fun. And I am going to interview my buddy Chester Moore, editor-in-chief of Texas Fish and Game Magazine, on the podcast today to kind of recap some of the things that we saw, some of the highlights of the show that we thought were really interesting. So here's my interview with Chester Moore. So I'm on the phone with Chester Moore, editor-in-chief of Texas Fish and Game Magazine, and we're just recapping ICAST.
Yeah, man, ICAST is an interesting show. You have not only all of the major tackle distributors, you not only have buyers and media, you have everything from kayaks nowadays to GoPro cameras. It's a real comprehensive show and a great way for someone in my position to go look and see what trends in the industry are. Right.
And has you've been to ICAST how many years now? Would you count?
I've probably been about 9 years now, something like that.
Okay. Have you seen it change a lot over the years?
I have. I really, it's interesting. Of course, the biggest obvious change in technology. The technology of a lot of the equipment out there is just mind-boggling. Things that 9 or 10 years ago was science fiction is now something that's commonly in our tackle boxes. A prime example would be some of the stuff I saw with Livingston lures. I mean, they're putting sounds out in these lures, multiple sounds. There's a Bluetooth accessible lure that you can change sounds on the fly with Bluetooth gear, and it was absolutely crazy to see this stuff, there. But it's real, and it's like something that maybe I would have dreamed of as a little kid, and now it's like in our tackle box.
It's next level technology, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Wow, that's great. And, we also saw a lot of, portable sonar companies, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean, there was a company called Deeper out there and just different stuff. And that kind of goes into something that really fits into what we do at Texas Fish and Game. For a long time, we've been focusing a lot on bank fishing, surf fishing, kayak fishing, land, and basically po' boy accessible fishing. And, it's really cool to see that people will be able to have sonar accessible from fishing from the bank, be able to GPS and mark spots and all of that kind of technology. It's really, really incredible. And I think those things, I'm not sure how big of a hit some of those are going to be, but I think if it does take off in the market, what we're seeing now is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I've said a lot on this podcast, Chester, that this is the golden age, I mean, we complain about things, the weather's hot or politics or whatever the case may be, but I mean, this is like the golden age of fishing. It just keeps getting better and better. That's what I think, at least.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting in terms of the equipment, But the thing I like to see is I am seeing a trend of a lot more focus on surf fishing, a lot more focus on bank fishing gear. And companies like Daiwa, who are known for some pretty technologically amazing stuff, are having focused on some surf fishing rods. I mean, you saw the same thing with Eagle Claw, with some very, very affordable surf fishing rods. I got to spend some time in Europe fishing in 2005 in the Segre River in Spain for those beast steroid-infested Welsh catfish. And
they're huge.
Chernobyl escapees, and 7-footers, my wife and I, by the way. By the way, hers was 7 pounds bigger than mine. I have to say that because she would call your podcast and correct if I didn't tell you that. But
I love it.
I saw a lot of the gear with some of the distributors out of Asia and Europe who were there. Basically, they're trying to sell to the Academy Sports and Outdoors, the independent tackle shops. A lot of we wouldn't know brands, but a lot of stuff like rod racks for bank fishing, not your typical rod holders, but a rack where you'd set 4 or 5 rods out vertically and fish, A lot of that kind of stuff, the bank fishing sonars, the drones for taking your lure out from an Israeli company that we talked to. And what it shows me is that a lot of people that can no longer afford boats, or maybe just want to get into kayaking or something like that, are the industry's taking note of that and responding with really, really good gear for those people who are landbound.
Absolutely. And I was even noticing on some of the kayak trends, there's ways to put your kayak in reverse with just a snap of a switch, or a pull up of a lever, that kind of stuff.
You're seeing these innovations, and it's great because, you take a college student or something, and these college students can't, obviously most of them have a huge student debt. They can't go buy an $80,000 bass boat.
Right.
That's why we're seeing, like in Lake Fork, there's going to be a world championship kayak bass fishing tournament. All of these kind of things are trending toward what we've been working on at Texas Fish and Game for at least the last decade, is honing even more. We have every kind of fishing information available in the Lone State, but we're really putting a lot more on the kayak, a lot more on surf, a lot more inland bank fishing, both fresh and salt. And, take the Eagle Claw. They have, 14-foot surf rod for $59.95.
That's great.
It's crazy to see some of that stuff out there like that. So that was something that really jumped out at me because it was a year where I walked in and went, well, there's a lot of cool text.
Right.
Yeah, even like seats for bank fishing that have rod holders built in them, and just a lot of that kind of stuff. And that was something I really haven't seen at ICAST as much as I have this year.
Okay, wow. No, that's great. So, the trend is going towards making fishing more accessible for more people. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and if you even look at what's being done at the state government level, Texas Parks and Wildlife right now is investing a lot of money in catfish. Because what they're finding is that catfish are very popular with inland fishermen, particularly people who fish from the bank.
Yes.
So they're working more on investing stock in catfish in urban lakes and ponds and all of these kinds of things. So we're actually seeing it all of these different kinds of levels. So it's not just the industry, it's even like the governmental branches of what's going on. And that's a great thing. And that's just one thing that I saw, but to me that's very hopeful because at Texas Fish and Game, we always want to have presenting fishing information for everybody, whether they're sitting on the side of the road with a cane pole and a white bucket fishing for brim, or whether it's somebody out in the Gulf of Mexico fishing in a big power catamaran for blue marlin.
Right. Yeah, and that's great. I love that our magazine covers both so well, and has that kind of, depth to it where we're not just, centered on people with boats, We have that kind of, interest in bank fishing and kayak fishing and those kind of things too.
Well, I'll tell you what was interesting. One of the things in Texas is obviously we are experiencing a bass fishing renaissance. It's unbelievable what's happening.
A
with
renaissance. All right.
Yes. Yeah, a bass fishing renaissance. Yeah, and it's pretty crazy to see what's happening now with this, And I say that because you started seeing a few years ago, Keith Combs won the Toyota Texas Bass Classic for the third time.
Right.
Okay. And when he did this, he broke it with the level of record breaking that he did was absolutely insane. It was well over 100 pounds.
Wow.
It was the biggest weight ever in history for that format. And it really showed something about something uniquely Texas. And then you had Lake Falcon produced in the last 2 years. Bassmasters ranked Toledo Bend #1 bass lake in the country 2 years in a row. You have Sam Rayburn's been in the top 10, I think, for the last 3 or 4 years.
Right.
You have all these lakes that are producing not only sharelunkers, but lots of huge fish. Sharelunger gets a lot of deserved attention for producing those, highlighting those 13-pound or better fish. But Louisiana does something interesting. They own half of Toledo Bend.
Yes.
They have a 10-pound lunker program where you bring the fish in, you get a replica, and they tag the fish and release it. Well, they've had like 200 of those fish brought in this year. So there's a bass fishing renaissance in ICAST this year. We talk to all the bass pros. Everyone we talk to, we ask a question about if you could fish in Texas with one type of lure, what would it be?
Right.
And the first thing was they were all excited about talking about fishing in Texas because how good it is. And you could see literally the industry responding with colors that are popular in Texas with a lot of stuff. But I saw so many crankbait variations, more crankbait variations than ever. And then after we reviewed the videos, we saw that over 50% of those anglers we asked, I'm talking about everybody from Rick Clunn to, you name it, to a newer guy like Hank Cherry, were saying crankbaits.
Yes.
Where they're placed. I expected 85% of them to say jigs.
Yes, I did too.
And probably 30% did say jigs. But it was interesting because even a couple of them even said, if in Texas it would be a crankbait. And I think we saw that with a lot of stuff that's on the market right now.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So crankbaits are the go-to bait now for Texas, according to a lot of professional bass anglers. That's great.
Pure Fishing, which is the parent company, it's Berkeley actually, the company that'll put it out. They have a crankbait hitting the market that is about the size of a normal bait that would crank down to 12 or 15 feet that goes 25 feet. They got the size way down.
Wow.
Most of the time, you look at something like your XD, your 10XD from Strike King, it's the size of it's huge. Well, Berkeley has one that is, I think it's called the Dredger, that goes just a lot deeper, but it's got the size down a little bit, because throwing a crankbait all day can be very tiresome, especially if you're cranking so deep.
Yes, it can.
So, and this basically was responsive to what was going on at places like Falcon and Toledo Bend and all of these lakes. So we're seeing Texas, what's happening with bass in Texas, drive the market on hard soft plastic bait.
Interesting. So they're paying attention to us here in Texas, right?
Yeah, man, absolutely. And it's a huge fishing market. I mean, the bass thing is huge. And then you look at the saltwater side of things. Honestly, on the saltwater end this year, I didn't see as much innovation. Of course, you can't innovate something earth-shattering every year.
Right.
It's just not going to happen. But what I did notice is that for years, you could literally take a company that made freshwater lures and soft plastics and hard plastics, and then take another one that made saltwater lures, and the realism on the freshwater end was so much better. They just kind of left it like, halfway paint jobs in the saltwater. Now I'm seeing what I call final approach technology, where you have the paint jobs and everything done in the eyes and everything placed in such a way that hyper realism and a lot more of the soft plastics and things that are being used for, and also hard plastics for saltwater. And that continued this year, and it's really cool to see that. And, where I live in Sabine Lake, that's not that important because the water's fairly dingy. But when you get down to Lower Laguna Madre and places like that, you're fishing out the jetties at Port Mansfield, and you got clear water. You may be trying to catch a snook down there or one of those big speckled trout. You need some stuff. That is going to really have an uber realistic look.
Right. You want something that's going to be that's going to fool the fish to thinking that it's real, not something that's just going to be halfway there.
Yeah, one of the companies that's been running with us, and I've used their stuff for years, P-Line, won in a category this year for their fluorocarbon. They have a fluorocarbon that's been proven to be super, super, super invisible in the water. The thing about fluorocarbon is it has basically the same refractive property as water, so it doesn't really show up in the water like a monofilament would. And so that's something I'm seeing more marketed towards saltwater,
Right.
As I'm seeing a lot more, even fluorocarbon and stuff marketed towards saltwater, not just on the big stuff. You've been seeing that for years with the offshore market, but for the inshore, seeing a lot more of that because the saltwater guys are catching up on the tech. In the industry, what happens is a lot of people don't realize this. Most of the fishing industry, in terms of manufacturing and leadership, is based in the North and Midwest.
True. I see that too.
Yeah, so a lot of those guys are like, they haven't paid as much attention to the saltwater. They got products, but now they're seeing, especially in places like Texas, where we have 800,000 licensed anglers that are fishing on the coast, they're seeing incredible number of purchases for stuff, and they're realizing that these saltwater guys will be as savvy on buying gear as the freshwater if they have the opportunity.
Right, if they would just if they just had the opportunity, yeah, and so that's the companies responding to that is what I'm trying to say, right?
Yep, absolutely. The market's driving that.
That's great. I mean, that's great. Like I said, it just keeps getting better. That's the joy of this. So, no, that's great.
Well, I'll tell you what turned the innovation, in my opinion, on the saltwater market happened about a decade ago with Gulp, Berkeley Gulp.
Right.
I remember going down to Rockport to field test Gulp with the inventor, one of the inventors of Gulp, John Prochnow, and some other people from that company. And I remember reading the packaging, and I'm like, it works like live bait. Well, I went behind the dock and cut one of those early Gulp shrimp up in small pieces.
Huh.
I thought, if it works like live bait, I'm just going to be able to put one of these in the bottom and catch like a hardhead or something without getting any action.
Some kind of trash fish, right?
Yeah, and I lowered it down, and before it got to the bottom, I had about a piggy perch about the size of my hand.
That's cool.
I pulled it back up, and 2 or 3 fish later did the same thing. So, I think that showed, because Gulp just took off. It's now like a standard edition in the saltwater tackle box,
Right.
So I think that really started pushing innovation for what we're seeing. So I'm seeing a lot of bright things ahead. I'm seeing a few companies realizing they were overpriced. We talked to some companies out there that have a lot of technology. They're taking their own hits, their own cuts, to make sure they can get things to a price that more people can afford because of what's going on in the still economy.
Right.
So overall, I'm seeing a very healthy, thriving market, especially for Texas, in saltwater and in bass fishing.
That's great. I mean, that's great that the pricing is getting to where you can afford it, and then it's also being more, being marketed to more people where everybody can get involved in it that wants to. That's the joy of it. I really think so.
Yeah, and like we talked about saltwater with like but it's not just saltwater bank fishing. It's also fishing for catfish in the rivers, and alligator dar, and a lot of stuff that a lot of people do. So all access is still having that technological factor. And, that's something we're all proud of, the Neves at Texas Fishing Game, myself, and everyone part of the magazine.
Yes, we are.
All the writers are that we are for everyone. We want everyone, whether you're deer hunting in East Texas on national forest land or whether you have a South Texas lease that costs you $10,000, we want to make sure you have a better outdoor experience. And when we went to ICAST, our eyes were trained on things that were for everybody.
Right. Right, that were all inclusive, I guess is the right word to say, right?
Yeah, because it'll be easy for us to go and just get as much free product as we want to get.
Right.
That's the way the industry works, and that's how we field test, and make it all about us. But that excludes a lot of people, so we want to be able to do all of the above and make sure everyone has access to great information, so their time on the water, which is sacred, the time in the woods, which is sacred, can be enjoyed to the maximum.
It is sacred, all of us that work hard, and especially even at this magazine, that work hard, it's hard sometimes to find time to get out and hunt and fish as much as we'd like to, but it is sacred time out there. And, these companies are really making the best of the best, use of that time, I think. So. Well,
it is true, man. And, I don't get to spend as much time on the water as I like to, different things I got going on in my life. And I just feel like I need to say this, if you have a choice between going to your little girl's soccer game or going fishing, always choose the soccer game.
Yeah, I say that too.
Always spend time with the family.
Right.
That's the most important. But when you have a chance, plug your family into your outdoors.
Right.
And then make sure you're geared up and have the right information so that your trips to the outdoors are a lot more productive.
Absolutely. That's perfect. I mean, that is spot on, sir. Anything else to add, Mr. Chester?
It was a lot of fun. I always enjoy that show. Any place I can talk to Rick Clunn and my friend Rick Clunn, and or a guy like Robert over at Livingston, who's an inventor, innovators in the industry from yesteryear in terms of their beginnings to still participating like Clunn now, or people like Robert who are inventing lures, or the people over like John Prochnow who are part of that Gulp thing. When I can understand where all this is coming from, it makes me excited for the future. And look, we can write in the magazine and on the website all day long about how we went outside in the clear, calm waters of Toledo Bend in the Gulf of Mexico, and the sun rose over the horizon. And man, I love God's creation. I love that. I never take it for granted. But I can get up a lot later and go through a lot less expense to experience that kind of thing. When we get on the water, we want to catch fish.
Right.
And we want our readers to catch fish. So with the videos you'll see at fishgame.com, all things you see. No, it's all about you catching more and bigger fish.
Right. That was our whole goal going into this show, wasn't it?
Yep. How is this going to translate to catching more and bigger fish?
Right.
Someone sitting in front of a camera and saying, well, it's got, copolymer or carbon fiber, blah, blah, blah. That's okay if they can translate to why that works.
Right.
But at the end of the day, the angler wants to know, is that rod going to help them fish a crankbait more effectively? Is that lure going to lure in that big speckled trout that they've been swimming past, lure past and never getting a bite? That's what it's about. That's what it'll always be about for us. And it's an honor and privilege to work in this industry and to be here doing this with Texas Fishing Game and to be on your podcast.
Well, thanks so much, Chester, for your time. I really appreciate you taking the opportunity to talk with us today.
Thanks, Dustin. Stay wild, man.
Well, as all of our interviews go, that was a fun one. I have not done a phone interview in quite a few months, so I tested all my equipment this morning before I got on the phone with Chester to make sure everything was working correctly. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, talking about Texas fishing and what Texas is all about as far as saltwater and freshwater. And we have a lot of great companies out there, a lot of them advertise in our magazine and on our website. And, I definitely invite you to take the opportunity to check that out and see what some of these companies are up to. We didn't talk in detail about too many companies specifically, but I really think what's going on in the industry is exciting, and it's inclusive to everyone who wants to enjoy fishing, and ICAST definitely was an eye-opener this year for me. It was my first ICAST show to go to, so I kind of got to see what it was all about, but it was an amazing show, and I had a great time. And everybody that went from our magazine just had a blast, so we really appreciate it. Feel free to check out our August issue of the magazine. It is getting ready to hit stands pretty soon here in late July when I'm recording this podcast, and we have a really cool cover and a lot of great content in there. And then we have a special section for hunting at the end of the magazine, the back of the magazine, called a special section that we write editorial on, and we feature advertisers that are specific to hunting and those kind of things. So that's something to watch out for in our magazine this month of August that's coming up. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for reading. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for tuning in and checking this out, and have an awesome day in the outdoors.